Happy Friday, and welcome to another edition of the Sal Greco Show, and I'm your host, Sal Greco. On this episode of Sal Greco Show, we're going to be discussing numerous topics, and with my friend, Eric Dym, from the Finest Unfiltered podcast. If you are watching us on YouTube, please hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you're watching us on Rumble, hit the Rumble button, hit the like button. And if you're listening on any major podcast streaming platforms, please like, share, and subscribe. There's a lot to cover here. We're going to be discussing New York City, Eric Adams, car pursuits in the New York City Police Department, and a recent article that was actually written by the former head of the Southern District of New York, Damian Williams. Remember that guy? He indicted Eric Adams. But with that being said, let's get right to it. So as promised, here is my friend, the co-host of the Finest Unfiltered podcast, and now retired NYPD Lieutenant Eric Dym. Eric, welcome back. How's everything going? I know you're in LA. How is it going with all those fires that happened there? Are you safe? Is everything okay with you and your family?
Well, thank God. I mean, everybody knows I talk about it. So in retirement, part of my hobbies is traveling. So I've been traveling by RV and I've been living by RV. I love it. So that's the beauty. I can just pick up and drive away. So, but right now, I tell you what, I was driving through LA right in the heart of it on Sunset Boulevard, and the sky was looking like doomsday. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. It was just completely black. You could smell the smoke. I haven't seen any houses on fire myself personally. I haven't been that close. I did evacuate to Santa Barbara, which is about 3 hours, so I'm safe right now. But I have been on the phone with some people that I know that are in the area. They're helping out. They're volunteering. So I'll wait for the call. I said I'd love to help out if I can. But right now, I mean, it's just complete devastation. There's some towns in LA that are just completely wiped out off the map. It's sad. Houses are gone. Streets are gone. It's completely unrecognizable. So hopefully we can get back. It reminds me, I went with the NYPD, actually. I went with back in 2005. I deployed to Louisiana, to New Orleans, to help out with Hurricane Katrina. I was down there for 3 weeks with the NYPD. Same thing. Devastation. Towns and cities were just completely wiped out. So this is on the same scale. Maybe even worse.
I actually would say that it's actually a lot of blame here on the legislation there in California, particularly the mayor and the governor, who seem completely clueless. And it seems like in a few days we're about to have a new president who's going to be the bigger person in the room and have to handle this from a federal level, which is unbelievable. And I feel my heart goes out to this. I always say, LA is this big blue city and all this stuff, because it is. New York City is the same as LA. It's like they mirror each other. But LA, if anyone's ever been there, or California, I love the coastal towns. Redondo, great place. Manhattan Beach was a great place. I've been to Santa Monica. I loved it. Maybe the people aren't the greatest because, as you know, there's a lot of, we're going to say, I don't know, you want to call them radicals, just believe in psychotic policies and stuff. But you can't beat the atmosphere there. The food is great. I would give it a thumbs up. It probably was even better many, many years ago, the way, the people in the area were. But now it's manageable. But still, I don't think anyone deserves it. So my heart goes out to you. If you could do anything, that's great, Eric. I just, not a couple of months ago, I was helping out with Hurricane Helene. So I know the feeling. So whatever you could do, hopefully, you could have to spring into action once again,
It's funny. I call people that live in LA Yankees at the beach, because, they always say, oh, you're from New York, and I'm like, well, listen, to me, the politics, it feels just like New York. You just got the coast. You got the beautiful beaches. So I call them Yankees at the beach.
But the weather's better. The weather is better.
The weather is better. It's kind of ironic too, right? Because I said it's amazing to me that I spent a majority of my retirement in Florida and California. In Florida, it's always wet. It's so humid. Everything's wet. It rains, the drop of a dime. And then California is completely opposite side of the spectrum, where, man, it's like, does this place ever rain? It's just dry as a bone. So, but you know what? They're both beautiful weather. I love it. Anything's better than being in New York.
Yeah, New York is what can I say? It gets cold, it gets damp, it snows. That's the problem. 6 months, 7 months is really, weather that you really don't like, and then the rest they have good springs. The summer could be really hot, or depends, and the fall is usually nice, but the winters are brutal. I'm not gonna lie. New York City is dramatically cold. But speaking of New York City, we're gonna go get right into this because the news I'm about to show you is in the last day or two or three that things have been occurring, especially this week. So I was going to cover something that was on X here. This post is from our friend John McCarty, the co-host of the Finest Unfiltered podcast. So this was a vehicle pursuit. This is the new, I guess, order that came out. So I'll read this for everybody so that they can hear it, because some are only listening and not watching. So it says vehicle pursuits PG 22115, that's patrol guide procedure. All members of the service, effective February 1st, 2025, in order to enhance and modernize the methods used for vehicle pursuits in the department. New revisions have been made to Patrol Guide Procedure 22115, vehicle pursuits, and other various patrol guide and organization guide procedures. The revised procedures encompasses numerous critical changes to how the department initiates, terminates, and documents vehicle pursuits. Note that vehicle pursuits will no longer be authorized when the most serious offense committed or suspected of being committed is a traffic infraction, violation, or nonviolent misdemeanor. MOS are reminded that department policy requires termination of a vehicle pursuit whenever the risk to members of the service and the public outweigh the danger to the community if the suspect is not immediately committed or suspected of being committed is a traffic infraction, violation, or nonviolent misdemeanor. MOS remind that department policy requires termination of a vehicle pursuit whenever the risk to members of the service and the public outweigh the danger to the community. If the suspect is not immediately apprehended, MOS will not be the subject of criticism or disciplinary action for self-termination of a pursuit if based on judgment. The pursuit cannot be continued safely. Additionally, the department form entitled Vehicle Pursuit Report PD 371-135 will now be solely available in the Finest online records management system forms starting February 1st, 2025, authority of the chief of department. Now I'm going to get to what John says before I get your take on this, Eric. NYPD reverses course on vehicle pursuits. Not only does it appear that the NYPD is going back to following the long-standing procedure regarding vehicle pursuits, it seems as if they are furthering restricting when pursuits can be initiated. What is particularly interesting about the order is it comes under the authority of the chief of department. The same person who as chief of patrol increased the number of vehicle pursuits to an unprecedented number. It was also alleged that as chief of patrol, he bullied and criticized supervisors to not terminate pursuits, but is now stating MOS will not be the subject of criticism or disciplinary action for self-termination of a pursuit if based on judgment. The pursuit cannot be continued safely. While I believe this is the proper course of action, I also believe this is the exact wrong person to implement, oversee this operational change. Now, Eric, you were all over this, particularly for about over a year or two plus in regards to this vehicle pursuits. You mentioned this on the show. Give us your entire take on this, because I find this fascinating that it's the same guy who pushed to have the pursuits is now terminating the way they want to do it or giving it a different look.
So obviously this is a knee-jerk reaction by the NYPD at the authority of chief of department, which is John Schell, which is so ironic, and I find this to be a paradox. And the paradox is this: the statement by John Schell to the press and to the media and to the public almost 2 years ago now has been, no longer will the NYPD stand for fleeing vehicles, that the NYPD is going to take a stance to it. Basically, he perpetuated that the NYPD would now use vehicle pursuits as a crime-fighting strategy. And we saw the upticks of vehicle pursuits substantially. And what do we also see correlate with that substantially is damage to property. We saw major injuries to pedestrians that are uninvolved in these actual vehicle pursuits, complete bystanders, and ultimately and tragically death. And so it's actually over 2 years now, because at the inception of the Khaki Pants Unit, which is the CRT team of the NYPD, when I was close to retirement in 2022, I saw the uptick in vehicle pursuits. I saw the crime-fighting strategies by the CRT unit, by these, these young, impressionable rookies that were being led astray. It did not have good leadership, especially since I did special operations my entire career. Anti-crime sergeant, special operations lieutenant. This was my forte, my wheelhouse of intrusive police work. But they're not doing it properly, and they're like reckless cowboys, on a rodeo because they are following their leadership. They're following their leadership by John Shell. So now we see a complete 180 as this patrol guide procedure comes out, and it's ironic that the same man who was driving this crime-fighting strategy is now talking about safety, and that's the paradox in it. He's now talking about safety and pursuits, and what do we see? John and myself, both on New York's Finest Return on Filter podcast, including you, Sal Greco, pretty expressive about car pursuits because you were involved in task force with the NYPD, citywide task force, right? And stopping numerous cars, and you made arrests for DWI. So you understand the complexities of vehicle pursuits and how ultimately the reward does not outweigh the risk in the majority of cases. So what happened in this particular case is obvious a knee-jerk reaction. And if you read the excerpts and you read that entire procedure that you just wrote out, what it basically says is there was criticism to the police officers for not disregard what I just said. There was criticism to the police officers because they terminated the pursuits. And you would say, well, that sounds like a good idea, right? Using good judgment and common sense. But what does it come down to? John Shell, who was the former chief of patrol, was driving this idea of it as a crime-fighting strategy. So it hit his ego. So we heard credible sources independent from each other that cops were getting ridiculed for taking part in pursuits and then terminating it based on the fact that it was too much risk for the community. And yet John Shell is the one that authorized this. So we see more restrictions and more sanctions as a knee-jerk reaction because ultimately the only outcome and byproduct that we have of these vehicle pursuits is injuries, damage to property, and death. So it's not a viable crime-fighting strategy. It never was. There are a few extreme circumstances where it's necessary to be involved in a vehicle pursuit, and those are far, few, and in between.
I like your take on it. I have one take on it. This is a symbolic gesture to nosy voices. Let's be honest. This is completely toothless. This is actually a knee-jerk reaction to litigation. As you know, Eric, anytime the department ends up in numerous lawsuits and litigation, they have to have a quick fix. So here it is. We're going to try to reinvent the wheel here because in the end, it kind of reads the same way it read before. Eric, you were a supervisor. Would you make a snap decision on someone if you're chasing someone? Let's say you're only pursuing a vehicle. You know, this guy, you pull him over and all of a sudden he takes off. Are you going to say, okay, he took off. I don't know any reason why, but I'm going to allow my officers or me in the car with them. Let's pursue this guy. But at the same time, Eric, you can just say, pursue this guy for half a block and then let's forget it. There's always another day. I mean, isn't it really a judgment call? Isn't that right?
But what it comes down to is discipline, professionalism, and maturity, right? So I would teach my police officers, not even just in vehicle pursuits, but when it came down to foot pursuits. And one in particular, I can tell you, one time, a few of my police officers, they were outstanding. Great eye, great keen observations on getting illegal firearms. That was our forte. We were the best. Now, one particular team, they went out one night, and I used to teach, I had a system of tactics to utilize that would minimize potential vehicle pursuits and foot pursuits. Why? I don't want injuries to my officers, and I don't want injuries to the public. And one night, they were all excited. They had this illegal firearm. It was a bad perpetrator, and they were involved in a pursuit. And I watched the video, and I heard the stories of what they would tell me how they got this illegal firearm. And, of course, they were all excited by it, and they were surprised by my reaction. So I went to the office where my cops were, and I said, listen, I'm glad you got the gun. Great job, you got the perpetrator. But I don't like the way you handled it, and I don't want to see that again. Because what happened was there was some laziness of utilizing the tactic that we applied because it took energy. It took effort, right? I would have the cops get out of the car a block, sometimes 2 blocks, before they actually stopped the potential perpetrator and then square off with the car. So to cause the actual person of interest to have 2 things to bring their attention to. And it's pretty tough to concentrate on the cops walking towards you and also a car who would divert their attention. And there was some laziness that night. So it led to a foot pursuit. They ended up, they were young guys, strapping, in great shape. These guys were track stars. They got the perpetrator. They got the illegal firearm. I said, I'm not excited by this Because if you continue on this path, eventually you're going to bust out your knee. You're going to get hurt, maybe get hit by a car, or a pedestrian is going to get hit by a car. So we want to take all the tactics necessary. There's different ways to skin a cat. Get these illegal firearms, get the perpetrators, but minimize foot pursuits, vehicle pursuits, because we don't want people getting hurt. And that's what this comes down to. Discipline, maturity, and professionalism.
You're spot on. And I tell you this, Eric, when it comes to all of this, let's say there is litigation, which there's plenty of right now. I mean, you could go back and we could look at a litany of incidents that have occurred since this, we're going to call a memorandum, was given by John Schell at the time as chief of patrol. But remember, now the former chief of department, Jeffrey Madry, at that time had stated, well, the procedure didn't change, because what they want to say is, when you're on that stand and you have to answer for this, Eric, what did they always tell you? What does your training tell you to do? What's in the patrol guide? That's what they're going to hang their hat on, whether you get indemnified or not. So John Schell might tell you, go for those chases. We need activity. But when the rubber meets the road and you're on that stand, whoever you are, officer so-and-so or lieutenant so-and-so, what does the patrol guide and what does your training tell you to do? Because saying John Schell told you to do something, that's not going to fly. And that's just the bottom line with this. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
Well, I can say this. The way the procedure was written before, and actually the way it's written now, it hasn't changed much. There's some more restrictions and sanctions where they add in verbiage about not pursuing a car for low-level misdemeanors and traffic infractions, which is something that's pretty common sense that we've known prior. But now it's actually in the procedure. It's sad that it shows we have an inadequate leadership right now and egotistical maniacs at the upper echelon of the police department, that the verbiage has to be put in the procedure that police officers will not receive discipline or criticism by using common sense and in not engaging or terminating a vehicle pursuit, which could outweigh the reward for actually the capture and apprehension of a potential subject or perpetrator, because the totality of circumstances would say it creates more of a risk to the public. And I always say, God forbid you hit a 5-year-old kid. Is it worth it? Especially right now. With bail reform and with the justice system that we have, no one's facing persecution and prosecution anyway. So, I love to see the data, the correlation. How many of these subjects that were initiated vehicle pursuits, where the police officers actually engaged in these pursuits, actually led to an arrest and also a conviction? And I haven't seen the data yet on that, and I'm sure it's pretty low.
You know why, Eric? Because they're in the business of perception management. That data won't be released. It's only certain data will be released. Because now, since I'm bringing up perception management, I don't know if you saw this, but I'm going to set the table. Eric Adams had a press conference, and at this press conference, it was the budget for the city. And he's getting asked a lot of questions about public safety, and I'll even get into other stuff he said at this press conference. But I want to put this on the screen and get your take, because we on the Sal Greco Show and on the Finest Unfiltered, along with our pal Marlon Bethel, who's also part of family, have coined the phrase perception management. Why? Because they're in the business of perception management. Public safety is not the top priority. It's perception management and controlling the narrative. Why? John Schell states that all the time, whether he's on Newsmax, whether he's on Dr. Phil, whether he's on Fox 5 or Rosanna Scotto. He's always saying, control the narrative. We want to control the narrative. So let me play this for you, Eric, and play it for the audience. Here's my post. At today's press conference, New York City Mayor Eric Adams and his administration continued their, quote, perception management, end quote, campaign, a.k.a., quote, crime is down, quote, narrative. At Sam Antar provides the true crime stats every week derived from NYPD CompStat, proving this to be a fact. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Let me blow this up and play this for everybody.
Can you talk a little bit more how much you're putting into public safety, specifically for subways and streets and officers?
Well, what I shared with the governor and the police commissioner is that where we are losing, we're losing the battle of perception. That's where we're losing. It is challenging for New Yorkers when I go to senior centers and other places, and I ask everyone, raise your hand if you think we have 500 crimes on our subway system a day. It's amazing how many people raise their hand. We have an average of 6 felonies a day with 4.6 million riders. We lost the battle of perception. We have driven down homicides, shootings, some of the major crime categories. Our subway systems numbers are, we want to get rid of those 6 felonies, but the reality is we're not dealing with the subway system that's out of control. We have cases that have basically overshadowed our success. And so part of what we must do is give people the feeling of safety. And there's no better way to do it than the omnipresence of that blue uniform, partnering with the governor's office. And some of the new initiative that Commissioner Tisch is about to roll out is going to address the omnipresence of the uniform. And what Deputy Mayor Williams Isom has been saying and doing for the longest, between Scout and PATH, we have to get people with severe mental health illness off our system. It is adding to, number one, we're not treating them with the dignity that they deserve. And number two, it is adding to the perception of not being safe. So we are going to continue to drive down crime. But our goal is to deal with how people are feeling. That is the highlight. Having 3 people stabbed on our street just shook our feeling and attitude anxiety. Having someone shoot a CEO in our city, having someone shoved to the subway tracks. You see those images on social media. It shakes your confidence in your city. But when you look at the overall numbers, this police department has really stepped up over the years.
Eric, what do you got to say about that?
Well, first of all, I love when they try to push this on the rank and file. The police department's doing their job. And when I say doing their job, I'm talking about the rank and file. The rank and file is doing their job exemplary with the crime that is brought to them. The crime trends, the patterns that need to be addressed are being addressed properly. They're making more arrests of illegal firearms now than they ever did in the past couple of years. Substantial amount. But why is that? The reason why is because there's more firearms out there. There's more illegal firearms out there because the streets of New York City are just complete chaos at this point. I think it's ultimately irresponsible for Eric Adams and just complete lack of liability and lack of leadership to actually lie to the public and be on this campaign to sell. It's almost like they use car salesmen to sell this idea of perception versus reality. Well, do you really feel safe or are you safe? Does it make a difference? The bottom line is people don't feel safe because the streets aren't safe. So this idea, well, if there's more ridership in the trains, well, the city's thriving because there's 8 million people in the city. So it's just a couple of crimes. And we see the same comparison when Eric Adams spoke about the West Indian Parade this past September on Labor Day. How it was just only one maniac that caused injuries and the death of someone where 5 people were shot. That this is not the accountability and responsibility for a mayor, for someone that actually cares about their city. Honestly, right now, I think the city basically right now is almost like suffering from mental illness. And when I say that, I studied emotionally disturbed persons, so did you, Sal, when we were in the police department dealing with emotionally disturbed people in the best of our ability. And what do we learn about schizophrenia? Someone that suffers from schizophrenia suffers because they see one thing and they hear different voices in their head. They can't make a decision on what's actually reality. And I feel like that's what Eric Adams and his administration are doing to the people of New York. They see one thing. They see the streets. They don't look right. It looks like it's a mess. But they're hearing different voices. Eric Adams is telling them crime is down. Jessica Tisch is telling them crime is down. Kathy Holden says crime is down, but let's put a cop on every subway. Crime is down, but we need to enhance the overtime in the subways. Crime is down, but look at this. And that's what it is. I'm telling you right now, this administration, it's almost like being schizophrenic, which is people suffer from. But this is the mental illness because this is an inadequate, inept, and just a complete criminal enterprise of administration under Eric Adams. And this gaslighting is just another insult to New York City. And the bottom line is, the civil service workers that are there are suffering because they have to work under this leadership. Inadequate and just complete inept.
I think you're spot on yet again. I saw this and I hear the crime is down narrative again. Every week, Sam Antar, whitecollarfraud.com, at Sam Antar on X. Follow his feed because he breaks down these numbers. Violent crime it's skyrocketed. I've actually produced the same chart that he posts. I put it on the show a couple episodes ago. The trend is actually scary because it goes down, I believe, from like the 18,000. This is violent crime all the way past 20 something. And it's like it's an upward trend. It's scary. And this guy runs around worried about perception. And I'll tell you how I know he's worried about perception. He even mentions it, by the way. Very recently, on the Sal Greco Show, I had another friend of ours, Marlon Marachi, the IA Guy podcast. He was on, and we discussed an incident where Eric Adams was seen at a fraternal organization party. Now, of course, the appearance of impropriety is huge because, remember, we found out that there's a ton of allegations of fraternal organizations giving money or booster bags to this guy or that guy. There's nightclubs involved, all kinds of crazy allegations, right? So Eric Adams showing up to this, is this really a good or bad thing? I don't know. Really, politically, is it a good or bad thing? And then the officers that are technically associating with Eric Adams, who is not in his official capacity as the mayor, you could definitely argue this because they use this against me saying Roger Stone is a criminal. Oh, we don't care that he's pardoned. Remember the DOJ letter they gave? Well, Eric Adams is indicted and he's continuing his criminal activity because the DOJ actually said they're going to nail him with a superseding indictment. And he's still under investigation and there's more to come with that. They actually said it's an ongoing investigation. Therefore, he fits the bill of someone you shouldn't knowingly or reasonably not be, engaged in criminal activity. You shouldn't be around this guy, right? So someone contacts me on Instagram. I don't know this guy, Instagram guy or girl, whoever it is, and said that who is the source of this persons that gave you these images of that you posted of Eric Adams at the fraternals. Mind you, the actual fraternal organization posted a picture of Eric Adams being there, which is already, not a good look. And they did that morning, the next morning, I think, after I posted that he was there. So then, I stated, look, if you're a police officer on this job, you should know better. What the hell are you doing even contacting me? Things are free, fair use for political purposes. You have no argument because they're trying, I guess, something private account, private pictures. Nothing on social media is private. Not Instagram, not Twitter. If it's up there, it's there. It's up for free use. But that's not even the point. So what really happened here, Eric, and here's the dirty skinny, the skinny on this. Someone from Eric Adams' office, the mayor's office, called in to some group, I'm not going to say which one, but a unit in the New York City Police Department, and said, how the hell does this guy have this picture of me with certain, people from the fraternal organizations? Who is the person, or how's they like to call it? Who's the rat? Who's the snitch? Eric, where have we seen this behavior before? Wasn't this done not even a year ago with yourself and John McCarry? Am I right or am I wrong? This is perception management, no?
Well, this is not only perception management, but this is the bullying tactics to protect the egos of this administration. So initially, when John and I started the podcast together, and now it's over 2 years ago, and we started to receive attacks from the upper echelon of the police department, the khaki pants team, we thought, well, ultimately, this is mainly about their egos. And that was a majority to it. But really what this is about, this is a criminal enterprise of an administration right now. And they're afraid of the skeletons to come out of the closet. So that's what's coming out right now. As the curtain's being unveiled, and we're starting to see the appearance of impropriety. And it's not just a sex scandal. And everyone's involved right now, and they're watching that because it's sexy. I always say stories are sexy. It creates drama. People like to hear about it. But the reality is that's just a spoke on the wheel of aspects of potential corruption in this administration. We have potential racketeering. We have issues with rental cars going on right now, improperly used and abused, right? We have misuse of overtime. And we're not talking about minutes and hours of misuse of overtime. We're talking about excessive amounts that equate to billions of dollars. We're talking about grand larceny upon grand larceny. Could put a lot of people in jail. There's so many different aspects. We're hearing about potential pay to play. And that's this administration. It's one thing after another. So sure enough, John and I received attacks on social media from this administration, basically trying to suppress our First Amendment speech. Because our First Amendment speech has exposed the inadequacy of this administration, failed leadership, failed complete mismanagement, epic fail. And what has it also exposed, right, in collaboration with you, Sal, Marlon Bethel, friends and listeners to our podcast that care? It's exposed corruption that's been investigated by the feds. because we have put a finger on it and said, hey, look here, look at this. This doesn't look right. And what I hear often, people text me, they call me, they're like, do you guys have a crystal ball or you have some type of inside confidential informant? I said, no, we have our eyes open and we're not playing pretend. We're willing to call things out as we see them. And that's the problem that I see right now with people that are actually inside the police department. And I speak to them and they say, oh, I'm kind of confused of what's going on. I said, really? Are you confused? Or you're just not willing to admit that you work for an administration and an organization at this time that is actually right now top heavy with corruption. And I think that's really what it comes down to, because people see a reflection of themselves. And if they admit that there's a high level of corruption in their own administration, they find that it's reflective of themselves. And I say to the cops out there right now, and the overwhelming majority of the rank and file, this is no reflection of you. But what this is, and you have to have your finger on it, you have to be willing to call this out. This is ultimately trickles down to the rank and file and who takes blame for it. I mean, right now, with an excessive amount of overtime completely abused by the administration at the upper echelon, who's paying for it right now? Not the guys in the khaki pants that have the amenities and the blanket protection. It's general population of NYPD in these precincts with their boots on the ground in high prolific, high crime precincts where they need to work the overtime are now being suppressed and threatened that if they do any overtime that's unaccounted for, there'll be a UF-49 to back it up. And what's a UF-49? Universal Form 49, which gets distributed through the department for an explanation to explain why you had an extra hour of overtime with a face-to-face relief shooting post. Absolutely ridiculous. And ultimately, what it says to me is it's nothing but the same, and nothing's really changed. We're using virtual signaling in this idea that we're cleaning house and cleaning corruption, but it's further deflection and put blame on the rank and file and ultimately allow the upper echelon to escape any potential discipline or actually face accountability and liability.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think, I don't know if this is a scare tactic, is you whoever this is, you're barking up the wrong tree. You have your own issues. People like us, John and Eric, and myself and Marlon Bethel, we're not cops anymore. We represent, you're right, the people and the press. You can't just message someone and call them and who is this rat and who? Listen, that's Joe Cop talk. You all should know better than to put yourselves in these situations. And if you're self-impressed and you want to take pictures and videos and post them all over the place, remember, there are very big watchful eyes on you. So if that goes somewhere and ends up on a billboard later or on CNN or Fox News, you only have one person to blame, and that's yourselves. Remember the rules that govern the police department. Because now we can't just say, well, Sal Greco got terminated, or the hell with him. Because no, that rule could terminate you also. That's the point. We're fighting for all of you, not fighting for ourselves or for some revenge tour, because we could just sit back and keep our mouth shut. Very clearly here, there's a problem. I don't know what he was doing at this fraternal. I don't know why he even cared so much to say, why did you take a picture of me and how did Sal Greco get a hold of it? This is like child's play, but that's Eric Adams, the king of the perception management. And now I'm going to show you something else, because you were just talking about these car rentals. So there was a big scandal with that. And I actually posted something, and I put all of us in it, because this is another scandal and another part of the corruption probe. And people seem to miss it because you hear about it and all this. And I'm sure Eric will explain it to you more. But this one part of it, no one ever mentioned. No one even bothers stating this, but it's all true what I'm about to show you. So I want to get Eric's take and let Eric explain the whole story, because he covered it also on the Finest Unfiltered. So this was a post on X that I posted, and you see right there, it says NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch orders review of NYPD auto leasing program amid concern over abuse. On the left is the 50A, which is the website you could check out anybody who's either worked in NYPD, currently there, their discipline, where they work. And there's Mark Bussell, an inspector for Patrol Service Bureau, IES. That's inspections. Brooklyn South, all these different boroughs, right? Then you have Mohammed A. Nomani. He's a lieutenant at the same place, which means that's his underling. That's his driver. That's his ICO. That's his guy there in this unit. So here's what I wrote. Breaking news, breaking NYPD news. CEO of PSB Inspections, Mark Bussell, worked directly for now NYPD Chief of Department John Schell as Chief of Patrol and made CRT's investigations virtually go away allegedly. Mark had an unmarked department vehicle assigned to him and only drove the Crowlow to and from work. Right hand to Bussell, Lieutenant Mohammed Nomani, who works in the same unit, used the Category 2 vehicle assigned the Category 1. That's the take-home vehicle, being allegedly caught doing so in the past. Bussell's response to Nomani being caught was to give his Category 1 vehicle to him, and Bussell used the Crowlow vehicle, allegedly because nobody would question the CO about the Crowlow usage since he reported directly to John Schell and Kaz Daughtry. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Hashtag the finest unfiltered. Eric, what is your take on that? The whole scandal. We have Crowlow, which is, you can explain what that acronym really means, what it's for. But now that you know that, because you could see the involvement of it, what is your take on all the whole program?
Well, I think your post laid it out pretty well. So Crowlow, like everything else in the NYPD, I'm sure other police departments throughout the country have acronyms also, little ditties of how they remember things. So it actually stands for Confidential Rental and Leasing Office, right? Because there's cars that are assigned to the police department by rental, and they're utilized for different purposes. And also within the police department, we have different categories, just as you mentioned that post. Category 1, Category 2, Category 3. And these different categories describe when a car is a take-home car, when it's utilized just to and from work. Is it a car that's supposed to be part of the precinct? Is it a car you can actually take home? But these categories are very specific, right? Also, usually they're very specific also to the billet, right? Particularly lieutenants in internal affairs, or maybe certain administrations, certain units within the NYPD get Crowlows, which is confidential rental and leasing office cars, or cars assigned to them because of the nature of their work. Maybe they need to be discreet. But what's going on here, and you put it in your post, really exposes when I speak about the police department being disseminated into 3 tiers. I always say tier 1 is nepotism along with the upper echelon, right? Your tier 3 is your general population, but in the middle right there is your tier 2, and that's your khaki pants. So it's rules for thee and not for me. There's different standards and metrics and measures throughout the police department. And what we see is a blanket of protection when it comes to khaki pants. And you put in your post there that these investigations are they're going away. They're not being acknowledged. And how do we know that? Well, the evidence is there, right? We've seen a lieutenant from the CRT unit actually involved in a vehicle pursuit. They actually apprehend a particular perpetrator, subject, a person of interest. But once that perpetrator is in custody, this particular lieutenant, Stephanopoulos, his name is, stomps on the perpetrator's head when he's already in custody. And no need for that. Listen, I can tell you right now, being the most complained cop, getting illegal firearms, I've deployed strikes, I've been involved in numerous force cases, and I take ownership of it because it was necessary. But never did I ever need to utilize a stomp on someone's head, especially when they're in handcuffs. To me, that was so egregious. And we never heard of an actual investigation. That particular lieutenant was modified for a short time, but as we speak, full duty running around with a gun belt in New York City. Now, if you compare that to anyone else, if that was myself, Sal Greco, John McCarry, Marlon Bethel, or many of our friends and listeners that are active and retired, they would be suspended and probably, and most likely, persecuted and prosecuted by our local DA offices in New York City. And we don't see that. So clearly there is a blanket protection. So that post, it does correlate to this Crowlow program, but ultimately what it comes down to is it applies to numerous aspects in the police department where investigations are not actually being disseminated. They're not actually being commenced properly because certain people have blanket of protection and different amenities because they fall under a certain tier.
I love the way you always break it down with the 3 tiers. Only thing is the nepotism in tier 1 is nepotism and cronyism. Because nepotism would be, that's the second cousin, first cousin. But cronyism is anybody, they just say, I like Joe. Joe's my guy. Therefore, Joe can do whatever he wants, which is what we're seeing. Because I'm also going to go back to the press conference. Later on in this press conference that I showed you the little clip of the perception management, Eric Adams is asked about the NYPD budget, which is completely blown. His answer is because they had to change so he says they changed the law. Remember the protest? He says, due to protest, which That's how the cost went up high. That's why we need more money. And I don't care what we spend. Public safety is number one. What he's trying to hide, Eric, is the fact of what you mentioned also prior. This pay for play, quid pro quo, sex scandal. We have them using overtime codes that belong to federal government grants and then applying them for their own overtime. There's all kinds of allegations. I could tell you with this Crowell thing, right after I posted this, someone else, we're going to say another source, came back to me and said, oh, well, the commanding officers and executives were actually asking for the Crowell cars for their spouses. So, Eric, that means they want to get this Crowell car so that their own spouse, who's not a uniform member of service, is not a cop, to run around with this car. On who? The taxpayer dime? And you know who else did that and is being investigated for right now? The New York City Sheriff, Anthony Miranda, who, by the way, Eric Adams stated he's got $300 million going to their office. Meanwhile, they just got a ruling against them that said everything they've been doing, raiding places, is unconstitutional. Why do you need any money when you're going to need money for litigation? Why are you going to give him any more money? He already had $100,000. He can't explain why it's in his safe in his office, Anthony Miranda. So, I mean, we just see a pattern here, Eric. It doesn't matter where it is. Perception management. You got goons running around, executives with this car. You know, if it's not one thing, it's another. Now they want to blow the budget because they have to cover for why there's all this money in the chief of department's bank. That was one of the things that I explained in the last prior episode with Sam Mantar's chart. The chief of department has money buried there and they can't explain why. And he found it, which falls into the budget problems with the overtime. So, I mean, Eric, what are your thoughts? My head is spinning just saying that. I can't believe how corrupt these people are and how into disrepair New York City has become. It's like despair everywhere.
You know what I find so interesting about these conversations? If it was 10 years ago right now, if I could look back and close my eyes and go back 10 years, and if I heard you saying this story right now that spouses were taking these Crowell cars, confidential rental and leasing office cars assigned to the police department, it would be shock and awe. I would be, whoa, wait a minute, whoa. What did you just say? It would be complete shock and awe. I got to be honest, I probably wouldn't even believe you, right? And you're my friend, but I was, wait a minute, you have to say that again. But what's crazy about now with this administration, it's almost like business as usual. You can break up. We can talk. It's like tomorrow morning, you know, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to John. I'll talk to Marlon and be like, hey, you heard what happened within the police department? Like, all right, here we go. What do you got? And it's just going to be like roll off our shoulders. Business as usual. I mean, just think about it. We got a laundry list of appearance of impropriety and potential probes of corruption right now that we've actually become desensitized to it, where it's become normalized that there's potential corruption in the police department, which I'm shocked right now that I speak to cops right now and they're like, I'm kind of confused at what's going on. I mean, what are you confused? You see what's going on. You see the appearance of impropriety. We've been reporting on it. What's not to believe? I mean, unfortunately, this has become the theme of this administration, especially with the police department, criminal enterprise. And it seems like every opportunity, a rental car, and what opportunity is that? Potential racketeering? Anywhere they can have their hand in the cookie jar, it's there. So at some point, I mean, everyone deserves due process, but you know what? I mean, you throw enough darts, it's going to stick.
I can't say any better. I don't know what to say other than, you know, I can't believe that it's almost as if, like you said, if this was a few years ago, I'd say, what are you talking about? And now it's like, what else could be going on here? What? Wait a minute. What? They want to do what? The Crowell card, the Lincoln Navigators? They want to give it to their spouses? Because that's exactly what I was told. I said, no. Are you kidding me? Like, no. No, this is definitely what was occurring. And I'm saying to myself, you know, the other thing with this is the black boxes. Where are the black boxes? They never tracked these vehicles. Who took those out? What about the red light summonses? They passed the red lights. You know, they have tickets on Eddie Caban's former vehicle, right? And then the summonses in general. The only way you could track this car, Eric, is through if they pass by cameras on the highway and they might not even be in the city or the state. That's how you know where the Crowell cars are.
This is insane to me because years back when I was an anti-crime sergeant and a special operations lieutenant, I would utilize the Crowell program because I would get cars that don't have a light package. What I mean by light package, active retired NYPD knows other law enforcement. For anyone here who's not a police officer, light package is the sirens and all the stuff that makes noise. Be just a regular car. and I would utilize it for operations. Maybe there was a drug operation or someone, I got information, someone's selling guns. So where my cops could just drive around like regular citizens and not be actually noticed. We had a problem years ago on the Lower East Side where we had if you remember, a problem with hate crimes where Asians were being attacked. So we got ourselves a little Prius. So we would drive around the Prius, no light package at all, just to try to blend in to stop these hate crimes. And we would utilize the Crowlow program. But I remember all the paperwork and the loopholes that I had to go through to actually get a car. And I needed it for a legit reason to stop crime. I mean, now you're going to get hey, listen, my wife wants to go out with her friends. I mean, this is crazy. This is insane. And you know what's sad about this? Who's running this operation? It's all by the upper echelon right now. So some low-level lieutenant like I was, right? And I'm not knocking by saying low-level lieutenant, but in comparison to the upper echelon, who may be running an operation and want to stop some crime pattern, is probably not going to get the car right now because of this appearance of impropriety. Meanwhile, Brussel's like, from what we heard, rumor, it looks like there's no problem over here. Don't look here. I mean, what else is next? I'm going to wake up tomorrow. What else could there be?
Eric, this is going to be a documentary / movie at a certain point. We want to call this Crumbs. I don't know what. I mean, it just changed every day. You add another chapter. This is a whole nother. This vehicle thing will be to be continued. I'm sure there's going to be more about this. And what? Because in the end, it's really sad, Eric. Who's going to pay? Taxpayers. That's who's paying for all of this. They're being fleeced. And then you got this guy saying, please pardon me to President Trump, to anyone who wants to listen, whether it's Steve Bannon, the New York Young Republicans, Boris Epstein, whoever it is, Bruce Blakeman. This guy is a criminal. He's like this guy. If you would read this like a crime family, he's at the top, and then you have all the underlings underneath, whether it's the police commissioners, whether it's the chief of department, whether it's the sheriff, whether it's that nightclub in the Bronx. It's all part of this crime family, and Eric Adams is the head of it. So does this guy really deserve to even get pre-pardon? Absolutely not. Do you have to play this out? Because I think the reason we haven't seen any more indictments is this is a vast network. You need so many U.S. attorneys on this and assistant U.S. attorneys. It never ends. This never ends. The criminality never ends. You go down a rabbit hole. You're like, oh, my God, that really happened? But it did happen. It did happen. And that's why we're going to get into this next thing, because it's going to lead to first something about Tish James from Sam Antar. And then there's an article that I want to read you from Damian Williams, the former head of the Southern District of New York, who led the indictment against Eric Adams. He's been real quiet. He's not a real talkative guy, but I found this interesting what he had to say. Here's a post by Sam Antar, yet again, our good friend, whitecollarfraud.com. Hello at New York State AG Tish James. Did you catch any one-armed bandits during your stay at the Motor City Casino Hotel in Detroit? By the way, your campaign spending disclosure omitted the full name. It's not Motor City Hotel. It's the Motor City Casino Hotel. Were you trying to hide that you went to a gambling casino with campaign funds? Did you at least make enough cash to cover the $917.70 hotel stay? Eric, I don't know what you want to say real quick about that. That's, she's part of the crew. She's part of the Consofrito crew, as you know. She was there all the time with these guys.
Key thing to note, right? Don't piss off smart people out there that could actually, step on your toes, right? The toes you step on today could be the foot that goes in your ass tomorrow, right? We say that all the time. So Sam Antar, here's a guy that actually was working along with the FBI because of his knowledge of fraud, right? Because he was doing it himself, but he's so savvy at it. And he's just a concerned citizen, right? He's admitted felon. He takes ownership of it. He doesn't walk away from it. But you say to yourself, why is this guy getting so involved in the numbers? But you hear Sam Antar say it. He's tired of being sold that line also. He's being tired of being gaslit by this administration saying, hey, everything's fine in New York City. It's great. This is your perception. So a smart guy like Sam Antar says, wait a minute. You're going to throw numbers at me, right? And tell me about perception versus reality. You know what? Then I'm going to look for the evidence. And here's a guy that knows how to do numbers. So they mess with the wrong people because he woke Sam Antar up. And Sam Antar is like a magician when it comes to numbers. And he utilizes their own stats to show the gaslighting by this administration all the way up to Tish James. And she's not trying to stop it because she's a part of it. She's a part of the problem. That's a great question. Almost $1,000 a night. And what do we get by this administration? Lying and omissions. And the fact that the word casino is omitted is not coincidental to me. And that does appear intentional. So Sam Antar, shout out to you. Does a great job with numbers. That's not a guy you want to piss off. So New York City residents, they're tired, they're pissed off, and they're tired of being lied to.
I think all of this country is tired of this kind of stuff. Can you just have some kind of transparency and accountability? And with that, here's a guy that was trying to do that. And I know he's a Democrat. Allegedly, he's a Democrat, but he was put there by President Joe Biden, actually. And he was in the Subdistrict of New York, and that's Damian Williams. Here is an article by Damian Williams himself. Okay, it's an op-ed. An indictment of the sad state of New York government. The former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York makes the case for real government reforms. This is in City and State, which happened to be the same place that once said that Concha Frita was one of the top 50 political hangouts in New York. I don't know if you know that, but they were the ones that had an article about that. So here we go. From 2021 to 2024, I served as the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. During my tenure, the Southern District brought some of the most significant enforcement actions in America. We fought corruption on Wall Street and in our government. We protected the country from national security threats. We brought sex traffickers to justice. We advanced civil rights. We dismantled violent gangs. We attacked every level of the fentanyl crisis, from Chinese companies that supply the precursor chemicals to Mexican cartel leaders who manufactured the drug, to the local dealers who distribute the poison in our communities. By any measure, the Southern District has been historically productive. We achieved these results by matching innovative approaches with time-tested values, by investigating with urgency, by rewarding creativity and collaboration, by respecting dissent and rejecting partisan bias, by being disciplined with a limited budget and then returning billions of dollars to the public through our work. I'm naturally proud of what the Southern District has achieved, but our record of success demonstrates something more important, especially at this moment in history. It shows that government can work. Government can be energetic, efficient, and effective. This shouldn't be remarkable, but as every New Yorker knows, excellence in government has become all too rare. The timing couldn't be worse, now more than ever. It is essential for state and local governments to put their best foot forward. New York, unfortunately, isn't ready to meet the moment. Let's review the sad state of things and why it doesn't have to be this way. The public reporting alone paints a picture of New York City in deep crisis. America's most vital city is being led with a broken ethical compass. All this while New Yorkers deal with a declining quality of life, high housing costs, a too often unsafe subway, and a general sense of disorder. Albany is hardly in better shape. Its entrenched culture of corruption, which the Southern District has long sought to address, is only rivaled by its knack for inaction and incrementalism. Albany is wired in every way for insiders, with the predictable result that the problems affecting most New Yorkers are either deprioritized or the response is so diluted by special interests that very little changes. A glaring example is the cost of living. It's so egregiously expensive to live in New York that working people are voting with their feet and fleeing the state altogether. The lawmakers have belatedly begun to take action, but the problem should never have been allowed to mushroom into a crisis. Similarly, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the lifeblood of business and work in greater New York City, has been dysfunctional and wasteful for decades. But because of its Byzantine governance structure, accountability is spread so thin that it barely exists. On these problems and others, Albany has been chronically asleep at the switch, and New York is consensus. From housing costs to healthcare to education to crime to transportation, it's difficult to identify a single area where New York's government has clearly succeeded. The pervasive underperformance has led to pervasive public dissatisfaction. The people are in a foul mood, and they have every reason to be. But they also have been conditioned to believe that this is as good as it gets, and that our government is destined to be sclerotic. I hope I said that right. Scandal-plagued and systematically broken. The truth is that my party, the Democrat Party, has grown too comfortable with the way things are in New York. Reform, the kind of big structural change necessary to meet our challenges head on, is rarely pursued with sufficient urgency and imagination. And the measure of success too often appears to be whether we hold power on election day instead of whether we wield power on behalf of everyday people. For their part, Republicans, though largely locked out of power in New York City and in Albany, aren't offering anything like the reforms we need. Unlike so much of today's politics, this indictment of the status quo isn't partisan. As I see it, the most meaningful divide in New York is not between Democrats and Republicans. It's between the insiders who thrive in our broken system and the outsiders who are fed up and know we must fundamentally change it. from root to branch so that government can finally address our most acute problems. For years, reformers have proposed common sense structural solutions for returning power to the people and making government more effective. But without elected officials willing to disrupt the status quo, progress has been non-existent. That needs to change. Take campaign finance at a bare minimum. No politician should be permitted to raise money from individuals or entities with businesses before the state. It reeks of pay-to-play corruption and is offensive to most New Yorkers. And yet, the practice has persisted for generations, fattening the coffers of elected officials while feeding the justifiable perception that politicians and the taxpayers' funds they control are for sale. We also need to establish a true transformative public financing system for state elections to minimize the toxic influence of special interest money. The state's new matching funds program is woefully inadequate, a fig leaf meant to resemble reform without actually achieving much of it. The goal should be empowering anyone with good ideas and leadership chops, teachers, nurses, veterans, homemakers, and young people to run for office, regardless of their access to donors. The ability to raise obscene sums of money for a campaign is precisely the wrong bottleneck to elected office. Term limits should be enacted. Yes, there are potential drawbacks, but surely we can agree as a starting point that our statewide elected officials shouldn't be able to serve in perpetuity. 4 years is a long time. 8 years is an eternity. Who exactly benefits from New York's permanent ruling class? It thwarts generational change and shuts out new ideas. It also promotes timidity. The next election is always just around the corner. After all, when boldness is what the moment requires. Dynamic institutions, including the Southern District, embrace churn and renewal. That's how new thinking emerges, dogma is challenged, and vitality is maintained. New York government needs a thorough efficiency review, no matter your partisan leanings. It's clear that our government is far too inefficient. New York taxes are the highest in the country, yet our roads are among the nation's worst. And in New York City, 1 in 4 children live in poverty and 1 in 8 public school children are homeless. Government needs to examine whether it's using taxpayer dollars responsibly and whether it can do more to optimize outcomes. There's nothing progressive about bloat, nothing liberal about endless roadblocks that grind infrastructure development to a crawl. It makes government slow and dysfunctional when it needs to be nimble and productive. Democrats rightly defend democracy, and to succeed in that effort, we need to ensure that government by the people actually serves the people. Despite our challenges, and there are many, I'm confident we can do better. Change is a choice. New Yorkers can reclaim power and achieve necessary systemic reform if they band together and demand it. Loudly enough that politicians finally listen. That kind of transformation is hard, but in New York, it's long overdue. Little long, but what do you think about that?
Oh, it's long, but it's necessary that it's actually spoken out. I think that David Williams is a pit bull in this, behind this. I mean, and he wants to expose complete corruption that's going on in New York City. It's far too long, and we see that this administration took full opportunity of the potential of utilizing the New York City government and to make it your own criminal enterprise. And that's what we see right now. So we want corruption just completely exposed because we want it to come to a stop. And what is he saying here? Politicians, we expect you to do better. We expect you to be exemplary. But what we see right now is just inept, inadequate. And we see people that are self-serving, and they believe that the public should serve them rather they serve the public. And to me, that's just a brief synopsis of what we had to see what's going on.
I actually like that he mentioned the matching public funds, because that's basically saying, hey, Eric Adams, I know you're a criminal, because that's what he indicted him for, the public matching funds. He took $10 million. He fleeced the city of $10 million. It's not about an airplane upgrade, which is a parroted talking point of Steve Bannon and his cronies. I mean, really, enough is enough. Hey, that guy right now, he's out there against Elon Musk. He's fighting Elon Musk now. So it's always something with these people. We can't listen to those crazy voices from the right and the left. You have to stay focused because you need to govern, and you can't govern with crazies, especially guys that are on, facing trial. So that's a whole nother story. But I'm going to end on a one note. I wanted to show you another post because this is a future. This is something that I've been working on to bring to not only the Sal Greco Show, but the Finest Unfiltered. And we're going to have new guests. Now that I'm on the Finest Unfiltered channel, we're going to have political guests. Staten Island will be in great hands with my friend Frank Morano as their city councilman. Frank is not a yes man and will challenge others in city council on all the issues. Trust me, I know Frank loves debating. And Frank Morano, at Frank Morano, he's also the host of the overnight show on WABC Radio 770 AM. You can check that out on their app and on their website. He says, big change are coming to Staten Island as Joe Borelli, who's done an amazing job since 2015, is term limited. I'm leaning toward running for his seat to fight for the South Shore. Feedback, ? Email me, frank@morano4council.com, and then you could donate. There's the link. It's contribute.nycvotes.org/campaigns/Frank Morano. So, Eric, I know what you have to say. I know you don't know Frank. I know Frank very well. He was there for me when I was actually first being persecuted. He was on the airwaves, telling people to go to my website, donate to me. This is wrong. He advocated for Eric Adams to get rid of the case. Obviously, without all of that, maybe none of this would have came forward because, not to toot my own horn, but I believe I'm one of the driving forces on uncovering all the corruption here by Eric Adams, his cronies, Albany. So Frank spoke to me, and he's definitely going to be on the Sal Greco Show once everything is official and he announces, and also he will be coming on the Finest Unfiltered. So with that, I want Eric, give us your final thoughts, everything. I think the show is doing great. Your show is doing great. The channel now, thanks for welcoming me on the channel, but I saw you having more and more guests. There's more and more chatter. We're changing the discussion and the narrative of how, everything's just like one way when it comes to politics, and people need to stay informed, and we don't want people to be low information voters. That's how you got Eric Adams as the mayor. So what is your thoughts on everything?
Well, I say we're all these cops turned podcasters, right? Including you, myself, Marlon Bethel, John McCary, collectively, and this network we built throughout this entire country. I say 2025 is the year of the First Amendment. This is where this year we honor the First Amendment like we've never done before, and we bring it back to what our forefathers wanted. We wanted the people to speak, right? We saw Mighty Fuzz today on our podcast, New York's Finest Return Filter podcast, came on today and talked about oral arguments that were presented at court. The case that they brought up from the du jour movement about we are the people, actually, putting the administration of New York City to the test right now and see if they actually honored their oath. So shout out to Mighty Fuzz, shout out to the du jour movement for actually doing that. And they did a fantastic job. And they actually went pro se and represented themselves without a legal attorney. And they wiped the floor with the attorneys from the DA's office and also this administration. It was quite impressive. But I can say this, Sal, just like one of my most favorite movies, Donnie Brasco. Am I right? Tell me if I'm right in this part of the movie. A friend of yours is a friend of ours. So, your friend, I'm sorry, Frank Morano, right? Frank Morano? Well, if he's a friend of yours, he's a friend of mine. Is that what it was? Friend of mine, friend of ours? What was the,
Yeah. Friend of
great
yours.
movie, by the way. Donnie Brasco, right?
It was a good movie. It's a good analogy. And I'm glad to be here, and hopefully this will expand things. My show will be on at 12 o'clock, 12:05. So, I'll be smack in the middle of the day after the Finest Unfiltered. That's at 8:05 live every morning. And also, we're going to have X Spaces. We're going to have a chance, and maybe we're going to have our own little subscription-based thing where we talk about all kinds of, we go down the rabbit holes or exclusives or anything like that. You're going to see a lot more of it because this is what people need. You want to hear discussion. They want to get more content out. They want to be informed because you can't stay low information. We can't have a guy like Eric Adams be elected to office again. You got to know the issues, and you got to know what's going on around you. And we have to hold people accountable, especially public servants. Unfortunately, my brothers and sisters in the police department, you know what I'm talking about. You can't possibly tell me John Shell is a great chief of patrol or trade for the department. Trust, I work for the guy. Don't say that. And the future litigation that's going to be forthcoming is going to be very troubling. And I can tell you this, for everyone out there, it hasn't even been written. Lieutenant Quatisha Epps, remember her? The $400,000 lieutenant, which people said, well, she deserves what happened to her, but that was the whole first thing. She's a victim in this. She's not a willing participant because these people are monsters. She's just one person stuck in a tornado. And I'm sure there's plenty others that are unwilling to talk or afraid to talk. But guess what happened to her? She was modified and then suspended, like immediately. And the suspension came from Jeffrey Madry, who was the chief of the department, who in like 24 hours later he abruptly, you put in his papers, who now he stands suspended, and he's under a plethora of investigations. But so Quetisha Epps was suspended for 30 days, no pay, but guess what? Her suspension's over. You know why? They didn't bring any charges. They didn't give her any papers. She's a free woman. Right now, she's headed straight to retirement. And believe me, that lawsuit that's coming, boy, oof, what's going to be coming their way? So a shout out to Lieutenant Epps, and no matter what anybody is saying about her, that woman is someone that's about to change the way the police department has to do things. It took one person, and that means anyone else out there. If you know about corruption, if you have evidence of anything, and these people are trying to browbeat you and threaten you, they want to send a mob associate after you, then you should reach out to maybe John, Eric, myself, or Marlon Bethel, and we'll bring you on the show and put a spotlight on your case, because that's what we're trying to do here. We're going to spotlight the people that have no voice. Final thoughts, Eric.
Ultimately, some people are fans of Serpico and some people aren't, right? But one thing is true, and I spoke about this earlier today with John McCary, and I said, you know what? Whether you feel you like Serpico or you don't, some people say he's strange. I don't care. It's to each his own. But one thing he's right about that has never changed, and maybe it will change with Epps. She seems to be the only one, and that is when you actually report corruption, that the job can't come after you. Because normally what happens is if you actually try to report corruption and it involves the upper echelon, well, there'll be hell to pay. And there will be retaliation. It will be secretively, in some other form within the police department or some way in your role, but they will get you. But Epps, Lieutenant Epps, somehow she managed to break that mold. So hopefully we can start something new from here. This is the only way to move forward, because what I'm looking at right now, ultimately, if we just separate Lieutenant Epps from all this corruption probe that's going on, to me, it's just virtual signaling, and nothing really has changed, because we're browbeating, and I love you use that word, so I got to use it myself. We're browbeating the rank and file at the general population. Well, ultimately, the ones that cause the symptoms and the problems for the police department is the upper echelon, the nepotism, and the cronyism. But yes, the general population that pays. So shout out to Lieutenant Epps for that. Absolutely. I agree. And, she's at a point where, you know what? She had the upper hand, and she's a winner in this. So she's looking like a shiny quarter to me. So, I agree. Shout out to her. Outstanding. I'm sure we'll receive a lot of hate for that, but.
You know what? We love the haters and the fans as well. You know why? The debate is always welcome. But, like I said, this woman, in my book, she's the hero, because she put the finishing touches on what everybody knew, but nobody wanted to discuss. So you just keep a monster out there doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and his crew, and it goes all the way up the chain to you too, Eric. I know you like the Eric Adams is, he's got his hand in this too. And it took one person, one victim to come out. And what did they do? Just like everyone else, they come out and smeared this person and try to destroy their life publicly. And then they suspended. That's exactly what they did. That's what that whole article, the first one, was about, to plant in your head that this person is awful, and then lead you with, they dropped a little seed. Oh, this woman, she likes to sleep around, do all that. By the way, that's going to be a defamation suit. Jeffrey Madry's lawyer, you're going to get sued for that. You calling this person a swinger? You got any facts? You're saying this on a stage trying to defend this guy? I mean, come on. This is
the same thing. I thought it was really low, because I said to myself, okay, you want to have this opportunity to try to clear your name of any potential criminality or even civil liability. Okay, I get it. I don't expect you to tell the truth. Right now, it's about saving yourself. I get it. Mm-hmm. But he buried other people in this, and what he did was try to smear Lieutenant Epps. And I thought that was kind of ironic that, well, you're saying that you didn't rape her or force her into this for any overtime, that she was a consensual partner. Well, if she was a consensual partner, then why were you so willing to give out her pictures that she sent just for your eyes? Why are you so willing to bury her? And also now you refer to her as a swinger and try to just completely decimate her name to save your own skin. But my point to that is I'm glad that we had that press conference with the attorney, because we got to see, you know what? Eric Dym and John McCary and Sal Greco and Marlon Bethel, maybe they're not such crazy radicals as we've been referred to for this past 2 years. Maybe they're right. You know what? When someone's in a pickle, these guys only look out for themselves, because we've heard from some of the cops, not all, the overwhelming majority of the cops see through it, but some of the cops right now are saying how this is the best administration, and this administration supports cops and supports others. Did Jeffrey Matry do that? He claims that this woman, who he had a consensual relationship with, who sent pictures just for his own eyes, was so quick to give up those pictures to save his own ass. He was so quick to refer to her as a swinger and basically call her a slut to save his own ass. So you think they're going to save your own ass? A woman that that had a relationship with him, he buried her right away. So what do you think you're going to do to some cop that he doesn't even know?
Oh.
This is this administration. What do you think they're going to do to you? So wake up. That's what I would say. Wake up.
That's the whole point of the show. Eric, where can people find you? If not even when we were on the Finest Unfiltered channel here on YouTube, but where can people find you?
Well, listen, check us out at Eric Dym Cop on X, of course, Instagram. A lot of social media attention for the podcast, and we welcome Sal Greco, who's been part of the team, but now we're making it official as we make the Finest Unfiltered channel. And so we're trying to produce content all day and really get the message out there and be police media. I believe this is a new genre where it's police media. Talk about politics, talk about really what's going on, not just in New York City, but ultimately nationwide with politics, the correlation to policing, the justice system. There's so much information. We talk about mental health, a lot of different topics. So Sal Greco will be on the Finest Unfiltered channel, doing the Sal Greco Show, doing what he does, charismatic, always looking sharp with his suits. You know what? Shout out to Sal Greco. And Sal Greco will be vindicated, reinstated, and compensated for being wrongfully terminated by the police department. And you know what's interesting? We explored on this particular podcast. We talked about patrol guide procedure being a knee-jerk reaction to save the department from liability. And they did the same thing with you, Sal Greco. They changed the patrol guide procedure to criminal association in response to the Sal Greco's case. You know what that means? Sal Greco, you're a winner. You've won already. So shout out to you. Let's keep building this network. Let's keep getting the message out there. And let's be that force that actually helps the rank and file. So if the unions actually start to see, wow, these guys can actually make an impact, and it's not just rhetoric and it's not just a voice. So with that being said, I thank you everyone for being supportive, being friends and listening to the podcast. And for those that are haters, you know what? You're still a fan. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better. And I'll tell you what, there's going to be plenty more to come from me, from John, Eric, and Marlon for the channel. And we welcome any new subscribers, any new viewers, anyone that wants to come forward. Like I said, we're here, and we're just going to shine a light on these people because we've had enough. Because you're right. Those knee-jerk reactions is always litigation. And trust me, there's going to be a future one, Eric, I believe, with you and John's little case of how they try to suppress your First Amendment. That is to be continued. And with that, I'm going to say, everyone out there, have a good day. Don't party too hardy this weekend. Don't be like Eric Adams, but have a good weekend. And when we wake up on Monday, it'll be Inauguration Day. So thank God we're going to have President Trump back in office. And with that, have a good day.